I looked into boost leak testers and want to talk a bit about those. First, this is a boost leak tester that I got from Modern Performance, where I've gotten a lot of the upgrades for this motor, and they have this one here. So this open side you would just put onto the turbocharger inlet, that 2.5 inch section that normally the cold air intake hose would go into. I'll take the camera over and show this in just a bit, but you would put this on there, add in your pressure through, it's like a tire fill, or like a tire fill connection there, which is nice because you can add the pressure and it won't immediately leak out. And the idea with this one from Modern Performance is that you add the pressure maybe up to 22 psi and you listen for leaks. That's how theirs is supposed to work, which I found was pretty easy to do. Once you get pressure in the system, you can hear the hissing very easily. And I did identify a number of places that I'll show you that were leaking. So I'm really glad I did this test, and I think this is why I was seeing some not only lower vacuum pressure but even lower boost pressures than I was expecting, than what really it should be getting with the upgraded turbocharger, the stage 1 PCM. That should really be getting more like 15 psi of boost, and I was getting maybe 6. So yeah, that had me kind of concerned. So that's the Modern Performance boost leak tester. I found another place that has some boost leak testers for different Mopar stuff. Not just Mopar, actually, they have it for other vehicles too, but they had a lot for like the SRT4 cars and PTs. So let me show you that. This one I actually like a little bit more than the Modern Performance because of what it comes with. So you have that same connection to the turbocharger inlet where the cold air intake would normally go, and you clamp that on. But then this one has a dial gauge for the pressure, so that you can see right there, where the pressure's at. The Modern Performance one, of course, it doesn't have that, so you'd have to use some sort of gauge after you've added the pressure, or some sort of nozzle that maybe has a pressure gauge on it, which I don't have. So this made it really easy to connect this up. And this one gives you 2 options for adding the pressure to the system. You can do that same, I don't know why I'm forgetting the name of this stupid little nozzle, but the one like that would be on a tire. You can do that kind, or just the air compressor connection, clip it on there, and it filled it a lot faster. That way it added the pressure a lot faster. And this really helped me identify locations of leaks. Right off the bat, it was only getting maybe up to 5 psi, even with constant pressure going in. So it was losing a lot. It's no wonder I was having such vacuum and boost issues. By the time I tracked everything down and sealed up all that I could, it was getting 25-30 psi. So really helped out. And that came, by the way, from Turbo Boost Leak Testers. That's the name of the place that I got that from. I ordered it online. Turbo Boost Leak Testers. They have a nice breakdown of how to use it. In particular, I just wanted to read this to you as well. So it says, set your air compressor to a low pressure, about 20 psi to start, to attach your line to the boost leak tester and start to fill the system. Increase compressor pressure as needed to achieve about 5 psi in the intake piping. If you're finding it difficult to fill the system or not building pressure, you can increase the compressor pressure as needed. If If there's a large difference between the compressor outlet and the pressure on the boost leak tester, this indicates pressure is being lost inside the motor if there are no audible leaks. A bad check valve or EGR valve stuck open, for example, can be the cause. Watch the gauge on the boost leak tester until you reach about 5 psi. Listen for leaks. A boost leak will be obvious and sounds like air rushing out. Fix any leaks and repressurize the system. Increase the compressor if necessary to see 10 psi on the boost gauge to catch the next obvious leak point. Use soapy spray to catch smaller leaks by evidence of bubbles forming. And you repeat those steps, upping it at 5 psi at a time. So you would then do 15 psi, then 20 psi. By 20 psi, you'll probably find any and all leaks. It says here even that you ought to find most, if not all, below 20 psi. This next part is what I really found beneficial, is really what to expect on the dial gauge, on the pressure gauge when you've added that pressure to the system. It says, after fixing all leaks, fill the system one last time and remove the air compressor line and let the intake system naturally bleed down and evaluate the rate of the pressure drop. This is another good way to evaluate the intake system's ability to hold boost. It is normal for an engine to lose pressure about 1 psi per second at 20 psi and will slow down at lower pressures, losing about 1 psi every few seconds. This is general, and some engines will lose more, some less. Keep in mind that pressure will pass into the engine, into the cylinders, past the rings, and into the crankcase system, so natural pressure loss is normal. This is why it is important to vent the crankcase by removing the oil cap during testing, especially in the case a PCV check valve is bleeding air into the crankcase. It is ideal to have that air vented. So the part that was really meaningful to me, because this is what I saw it happening on that gauge, was the losing pressure about 1 psi per second. When I would get mine up to 20, 25 psi, then turn off the pressure or remove the line, that's what I would see, about 1 psi per second. And then when it got down to the last few, like under 5 and under, then it would slow down. So that tells me that it's doing what it should. And that was way better than when I initially started, where I couldn't even get really above 5 psi in the system. So cold air intake, battery, brake master cylinder, brake booster are all removed. And so I thought that would be an opportune time to do the boost leak testing. And that's where this boost leak tester would go. You would just put it right there on the turbo inlet. Okay, and then use whatever air compressor you have, add the pressure there, and see the dial gauge. And again, you'd want to go in 5 psi increments, starting with your air compressor about 20 psi, try to get up to 5. Increase the compression on the compressor if needed, and you go up to 10, and then 15, and then 20. And the last test is how quickly does the boost leak out of the system and that dial go down. And that's where you want to expect about 1 psi per second, and then right around 5 psi or a little bit lower, it should slow down, maybe do 1 psi every couple seconds. I also wanted to point out the places that leaks were coming from and what I had to do the test properly. So to get it all set up, you want to make sure that the brake booster hose is plugged. So I had this big one which goes over to the intake manifold right here. That needs to be plugged. Mine is split right here because I have my gauges for the boost and vacuum teed into this big brake booster hose. But you want to have that plugged. And initially I could hear it, but I had this particular hose tucked away over here on the intake manifold, and whatnot. But this is the cold air intake hose that normally plugs in way down at the bottom of the hose. Let me show where that plugs in. So normally you have your cold air intake hose here. See, this is the one that plugs down into the turbocharger inlet right there. And on the bottom right there, that's that hose that this one right here plugs into. And once I started adding pressure into the system to do the boost leak test, it was all just coming right out of this thing. So I had to put a plug over this particular connection right there to get the accurate reading. So you want to plug the brake booster, cold air intake. What I discovered is that I had leaks, and this was probably from, you know, finally starting the motor and taking it for drives, but down here, these clamps connecting the turbocharger discharge hose, the one that goes to the intercooler from the back of the motor, those needed to be tightened a lot. So there was some leakage there. There was some leakage, let's see, from, this is an aftermarket one, but because you can see I've put a plate over the original blow-off valve with the turbocharger and installed this aftermarket HKS blow-off valve. And I discovered I had not done this clamp properly, and you can see where I was messing this up trying to do it right. It was a real pain in the butt. I had to use zip ties to squash this thing together onto this intercooler return pipe that goes into the throttle body. So I had to really squish it in there, and then it took me a long time of getting that clamp, that little clip in there just right to finally seat this thing fully, because that was leaking. There was a big leak coming out of there. Those were the main spots where I was getting leakage from, but I went through every intercooler inlet and an outlet line and made sure all the clamps were tight. Was listening and feeling around all of, you know, the lines and hoses that go to the turbocharger and over to the turbocharger solenoids over here. You know, you want to check and listen for that. There's another one of the, you know, underneath the battery tray down there, you'll have more clamps holding that bend on the intercooler, inlet hose to the throttle body. And then lastly is the intercooler line that comes down from the turbocharger and goes across into the intercooler, you know, making sure those were tight and no leaks were coming out of there. This, again, is the Turbo Boost Leak Testers unit that I'm going to use. And we'll do it one of two ways. You can either hook your air compressor right up to that type of clip-on fitting, and then I want to do it another way, because when I remove the end of the air compressor, the hose, to basically turn it off and then be able to hear the it's just so I can see the rate at which the pressure drops. So I remove the hose and plug it with my finger, but I lose a lot of pressure during that. So there's another fitting. We'll use the second fitting here that will hold the pressure, because it is like on your wheel or or an inner tube, that kind of filler tip there. So we'll do it both ways and see what the results are like. So let's get this connected first of all. This goes right on to the turbocharger inlet. And once again, I've removed the battery, the cold air intake, the power distribution center is also unbolted and kind of moved out of the way. And because I'm doing some work on the master cylinder and the brake booster, those are both removed. So I have a lot of access right now to the turbocharger, which is why I figured it'd be ideal to do this test. And even though I've done it once already, I don't think it'll hurt to do it again, because there may be fittings that I need to retighten, secure down, or maybe I'll identify a new leak. So let's get to that. Oh, I forgot. Let me get just a dab of oil to put around the hose portion, so that it slips onto the turbocharger a lot easier. When it's dry, it's just real sticky. Okay. Okay, that one right on. This is a pretty tight fit. We need to plug a couple hoses I've got disconnected. So of course the brake booster hose is disconnected because the brake booster is removed. So I'm going to plug that up, and then also this cold air intake hose that goes into the big rubber hose that goes down to the turbocharger. This plugs in at the bottom. That I have to plug that, or else air just blows right out of that. I think once I've got those two plugged, we'll be good to put air into the system. So just a rubber tip over that, and then I have a punch that fits well into the brake booster hose. Okay, so let's get our compressed air. Okay, so if you were doing this from scratch, remember you would want to start with your air compressor. Around 20 psi is the recommendation from Turbo Boost leak testers. Start there, add more as needed, so you get up to about 5 psi on your gauge, and see if you can notice any leaks, and see how quickly that dial goes down once you remove or turn off the air. Then you go up in 5 psi increments, 10 psi, 15 psi, 20 psi, and still just check what is the rate of decrease. Is it holding? Can you hear leaks? all of that. So I think I got it all plugged up and we're ready to go. So let's sneak this in here. Okay, now my system, I just got full on all. Let me do that again. So this is just going to keep pumping the air with this particular nozzle, and I have my air compressor set up to 40 psi, maybe even 50, just because otherwise it wasn't really pumping it up too well, giving it pressure. So I'm going to do this again. Right now it's going up even higher than 20, like 25. Looks like it was going higher than that. By the way, a reminder, I took the oil fill cap off of the valve cover. It recommends to do that so that that's not blocking pressure within the system. So let me do this again. I'm going to let it go up around 20, 25, pull this off real fast, and then try and plug it with my finger and just see what the rate of losing pressure is on the dial gauge. So that's what we'll do with this nozzle. Okay, 15, 20. There's about 25. Okay. So now it says you should get about 1 psi per second as it drops down. And then, yep, right around 5, it should slow down to about 2 seconds per psi. Looks like we're getting that. And it's hanging out around 1. Just getting down to 0. Okay. I'm going to do it one more time. I didn't hear any obvious leaks, but we'll do this again. $15. That's going down a little fast, but then it kind of slows down. Way better than it was before I did this the first time. I couldn't get more than 5 psi. Alright. So that seems pretty good. Next, what I want to do is change out the nozzle here. I just want to see if using the other nozzle that will stop itself from leaking will have different results, and I won't have to try and get my finger on there so quick. And to install that particular one, I have to totally remove the tester. Hopefully this works. I was having trouble with this particular nozzle the first time. It did not want to pump, but pump it up. This one goes a lot slower. Okay. Yeah, that's nice. I don't have to put my finger over it, but Might have to turn up the air compressor to get it to pump up more. Yeah, it's going up to about 7 right now. Yeah, let me turn up the air compressor. Okay, we got up to 10. Now, important thing to note. Okay, that's up at about 13. There's about 14. Of course, the air compressor's got to be off, but I wasn't actually hearing any big leaks. Goes down. That's doing about the 1 psi per second. Once the air compressor turns off, I'll fill it up one more time. This whole conglomerate of hoses around here, you want to listen for any leaks around there. I heard one down at the bottom, the base of this cold air intake hose where it goes down and it has an elbow. It was leaking out of there, so you'll see I have some zip ties around some of the hoses, and I did it on that one as well. Just pull it real tight to make that seal tight. That seems to have done the trick. You know, and that'll also help keep that hose on if there's a lot of built-up pressure and you're driving and it might be prone to blow off because of the pressure. That zip tie is going to help prevent that. So, all right, the compressor's off. Let's pump it up one more time. Just do a good listen for any leaks. Now, this particular nozzle really doesn't fill as fast as the other one that's just a straight shot. In fact, I have my air compressor turned up to 120 psi right now just to get this to, you know, get up to 15, maybe 20 this time. I just increased it to 120 on the air compressor. Again, when I had it without this particular nozzle and it was just shooting air straight into the tester, I only had the air compressor at about 40 psi and it was pumping it up past 25, 30. So this seems to be a pretty restrictive nozzle. There we go. There we go. Okay, we're at 10. Yeah, it's a little past, that's 16. You are going to hear some leakage. That's normal. And the more pressure you add, it might start leaking out of places where it normally won't. For instance, this junction right here of all those hoses that go over to the turbo solenoids. I found when I really got the pressure in there, like 20, 25, this was leaking. But I'm never going to get that high driving. pressing, I think that's good. I'll be honest, I don't like using that nozzle, even though I don't have to put my finger over it. I like the rate at which it fills up with the straight shot of air and that it goes higher. Of course, you probably want to be careful. You don't want to overdo that pressure in the system and blow something that you shouldn't, but it's nice being able to really pump it up fast to 20-25 psi and you know, check for leaks better that way, because you can hear you know, the leaks will be more apparent at a higher pressure. But that's it. That's how you do the turbo boost leak test. Once again, that is the tester from Turbo Boost Leak Testers. And that was about $50. This one from Modern Performance was about $25. It'll do the exact same thing as this one, except that it does not have the dial gauge on it, so you just have to listen for leaks. Also, it uses this, you know, that same type of tip that I have on the Turbo Boost Leak Tester unit right now. So for those two reasons, I prefer the Turbo Boost Leak Testers unit. This one, of course, is just cheaper, and it'll get the job done. It'll do exactly what you need to do for half the price, but you don't get a dial gauge on it, and you just got to listen. And you don't get the type of connection that lets you pump that air in fast.